Welcome to this 2020 WCA Annual Conference virtual workshop. Thank you for participating in our online event. We also want to thank our annual partners and sponsors for their commitment and ongoing support of our 2020 WCA Annual Conference. Please note our virtual workshop presenters will answer questions at the end of their presentation. Be sure to type in your question in the chat or Q&A section at the bottom of your page. If you've called in, simply hit *9 to raise your hand and be unmuted by the host. Again, thank you for your participation in today's WCA Annual Conference virtual workshop. We hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Hello and welcome to this session on cybersecurity threats to public safety. My name is Paul Hill and I am with Motorola Solutions. I joined Motorola about 8 years ago and my background is IT security in the UK military. I'm really looking forward to taking you through this session and I hope that it provides to be valuable. So fundamentally, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity threats to public safety, but in order to do that, we're going to cover a few other areas. First, we're going to look at what does the public safety landscape look like today. We're then going to start to talk about the security challenges that I know that our customers face on a day-to-day basis. We'll then get specific on the cybersecurity threats to public safety before talking about some of the ways that we're helping our customers to protect their operations. We're going to finish on a few key takeaways that I really want you to get out of this session. So let's get started. And like I said, I hope that it provides to be valuable. So what does a public safety ecosystem look like? This slide is designed to show you what that ecosystem looks like. So at the top, we've got the frontline responder. Now, this is where we have our mission critical technologies. So land mobile radio or LMR, broadband technologies, as well as our video analytics solutions. As we go to the bottom left of the screen, we can see the citizen. Now, this is the member of the public who's trying to call 911 when emergency help is required. You've then got the 911 call taker, which the process can then flow into dispatcher and within incident management, as well as records, evidence management, analysis, investigation, etc. in the post-incident resolution. Now, when I first joined Motorola, this diagram wouldn't have looked like this. It would have been a lot more isolated agencies working in silos. I mean, the LMR network, the Astro systems, for example, were completely isolated, thought of as closed networks. But fast forward a few years and we're in a completely different environment. All of these elements on the network, on the screen, are designed to talk to each other. It's designed to get agencies talking to each other, to get the benefits of interconnectivity, etc. And it does create cyber concerns, and that's what we're going to talk about in the rest of this presentation. So all of these elements within the public safety ecosystem, they've got to coexist and they've got to reside within a network environment. So this slide is designed to show you an example of what that environment looks like. So we've got the dark blue section at the bottom, which symbolizes the LMR network. We've got the lighter blue circle, which symbolizes the customer enterprise network. And we've got the bigger white circle, which is designed to symbolize the enterprise IT environment and the connection out to the internet. So within that enterprise IT environment, you're going to have cloud services, wireless networks, email services, printers, lots of endpoints, hundreds of thousands at times, mobile phones, smartphones, etc., all coexisting in that enterprise IT environment. Within what we call the customer enterprise network, you've got the application servers for the elements that you saw on the previous slide. So in this example, we're going to talk about 911 call handling, 911 call takers, and then application servers such as Vestas. So the 911 call taker that you can see in the white circle in the middle of the screen, in order for the 911 call taking to take place, that particular endpoint has got to have connectivity into the enterprise, into the customer enterprise network, back into the LMR network. And the reality is that sometimes these workstations, these positions sit in that enterprise IT environment. Now, the whole so what to this slide is that the 911 call taker has got to be aware of the threats that relate to the position in the enterprise IT environment coming from the internet, in the customer enterprise network, as well as the LMR network. All of the risks, all of the threats that exist in those three separate areas, they are relevant to the 911 call taker. So you've got to think about security from that perspective, and then you've got to protect the network in that way. Now we come to the security challenge, and I've described this in three areas, and it'll be a common theme throughout the presentation that we'll talk about these areas. So the first one is digital transformation. We've spoke about that already, how technology, innovation, remote operations, interconnectivity is all coming together to give the benefits of a connected world. But it ultimately creates challenges for the people that are trying to protect, trying to operate, maintain, implement these networks. We've got the complexity issue as well. Complex, fragmented IT systems have generated visibility challenge, and it's made worse by the number of security tools which are required to support these operations. So the statistic on screen is 57 is the average number of tools that security teams need to manage their network. That's a huge amount of tools for one team to have to be experts in, as well as knowing how to use them to increase the security on the network. We've got the final challenge that I want to talk about is possibly the most important one to think about, and it's around challenged resources. At present, there is an estimated 4 million unfilled cybersecurity positions globally. Now, it's a scary thought, really, because even if you've got the budget to recruit a cybersecurity professional, these people might not even exist. What we're looking for is cybersecurity people that have got abilities and experience within public safety. And ultimately, you could be looking for a unicorn that doesn't exist. Even if you do find a person that can be hired, these people have got incredible salaries, and they only seem to be getting higher and higher. So they're expensive people to find if you can find them in the first place. And they're also expensive people to keep. The skill set, the training has got to be maintained over time. And it just creates a challenge to keep an environment, an organization staffed with the appropriate resources and appropriate people. We're now going to start to talk about cybersecurity threats. So as you see in a previous slide, we've now got to think about what do cybersecurity threats look like at the enterprise level. And the number of cyber attacks are only increasing in number, in sophistication, and they are costing billions, if not trillions of dollars to the commercial world. Now, we're also living in unprecedented times with COVID and some of the challenges and some of the changes that we've seen within 2020. So one of the statistics that I've got on screen is that during the COVID pandemic, it's been reported that cyber crimes have increased by over 300%. Now, I'm sure we can all relate to the increased amount of remote working from home, with children working through school remotely. It all means that we're using the internet a lot more. Therefore, there's a lot more opportunity for cyber criminals to target people because there's just simply a lot more people using these technologies. The statistic in the center is that $6 trillion is the estimated cost to organizations due to cybercrime in 2021. Now, this is a forecasted figure, but it's a phenomenal amount of money. And it just shows that cyber criminals are acting and they're operating in their space because there's massive financial rewards. $6 trillion for an industry, it's huge. So it's something that we know needs to be done. It's on the increase. Like I say, the sophistication, the number of attacks are only increasing, and the statistic on the right-hand side, it shows that over 18 million websites are infected with malware at any given time. So any website that you go on, there's a chance that there could be malware on it, completely unbeknown to the innocent visitor. They go to a website, they bring back malware, and then there's chances are that it can get back into a system that it wasn't particularly intended for, but it's the risk that exists nonetheless. Now I want to speak specifically around cybersecurity threats to public safety. So in the last 24 months, there's been over 450 known cyber attacks to public safety agencies. Now, this is a scary statistic, which is only increasing. Like I say, I've been with the company for about 8 years, and the amount of cyber attacks to public safety is really exploded in the last few years. So if you're familiar with the term ransomware, which we'll talk about later in the presentation, this has just gone through the roof. Now, go back a slide where we talked about the amount of money within the cybersecurity attack industry, if you like. These people are financially motivated criminals, and they are going after the systems that they know need to be on 24/7, because they're the types of people that will pay up the quickest. So we think about 911 call handling, frontline police communications, fire frontline communications. Those systems have to be on all the time. So the ransomware attackers are going after these systems because they know the people need the lights on all the time. It creates a perfect target for the criminals to go after. We've seen evidence of hugely or high costing cyber attacks within the public safety space. So back in 2019, there was a very public cybersecurity attack to the city of Baltimore. This was where ransomware, it took control of the systems within the city of Baltimore, and the attacker was asking for a ransom. And the whole experience and the whole completeness of the attack, it cost about $18 million for the city of Baltimore to recover from that. And then the final thing that I want to talk about is that these things are extremely fast when they take place. Back last year, there was a ransomware attack in the state of Texas, and within 24 hours, over 23 cities were impacted by this strain of ransomware. So things can escalate real quick. The analogy I always use with a cyber attack is it's like a fire. If you stamp it out quickly, it doesn't do a great deal of damage. Absolutely, it's an unwanted thing, but if you can isolate it quickly, then chances are that it's not going to cause major issues. But if you don't detect it, if you don't contain it, then it is going to cause serious amounts of issues. And this is what we see within the examples of cities like Baltimore today. Another example was the city of Atlanta. Again, back in 2018, very public cybersecurity incidents which caused massive impact to the city, to the government, and cost millions and millions of dollars to restore services. Now I want to be a little bit more specific about the rising threat to public safety. So the first one that I want to talk about is ransomware. Now, I'm sure everyone on the presentation has in some way heard about ransomware in the last few years. And this is where criminals, and let's not forget, they are criminals. Sometimes it can be easy to forget that cybersecurity attacks isn't a human sitting at the end of the keyboard, and it absolutely is. It's not this mystical phenomenon that just happens to exist somewhere in the internet of things or the cloud. It's a human, it's a person at the end of a keyboard that wants to cause damage, wants to generate revenue, etc. They target people, and it is humans and it is criminals. So ransomware is where someone deploys malicious software which seizes control of a system, and they then require and demand money, funds to release access to these systems, hence the term ransomware. This has gone up so quickly in the last few years. It's quite scary. I mean, I'm not a huge proponent of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but this is one where it's happening. We can see the examples. We can track the amount of ransomware that is taking place on public safety systems, and it is increasing. The second one is telephony denial of service, or what's commonly known as TDOS. Now, this is where telephone systems like a 911 call systems become overrun with bogus or spoof calls, so that the real people that want to dial 911 and get help in emergency situations can't do that. I mean, it's a scary thing to think that someone would maliciously go out and do this and deny someone else who's in critical need of emergency services the ability to get through, but that is the reality. Telephony denial of service, or TDOS attacks, are increasing because, again, you start to combine that with ransomware, and it becomes a huge revenue generating opportunity for these criminals. The next one I want to talk about is misconfiguration. So if you cast your minds back to a few slides back where we showed the customer enterprise network, the enterprise IT environment, and the LMR network, everything within those networks have got to be configured correctly. Now, the reality of this could mean that it's hundreds of firewalls, it's hundreds of thousands of endpoint devices. Everything's got to be configured correctly for it to be secure. Sometimes this doesn't happen. Sometimes networks get consolidated. Sometimes networks change, and it all creates an opportunity for misconfiguration to come in. And it only takes one endpoint to be insecure for someone to be able to get into a network. And another analogy I use is think about a criminal driving down a housing estate, and they want to target which house to go after. They're probably going to go after the one that doesn't have the alarm on the outside. It's the same with misconfiguration. People and the attackers, they will analyze, they will scan, and they will find the endpoints and the devices which have not been configured correctly, and that's the way that they get in the network. When it comes to cybersecurity, you've got to be able to think like the attacker, because you've got to be able to defend a network against the real life threats that someone is going to use on a particular network. So it really helps to think about it from that perspective. We're also starting to see an increase in data breaches and data leakages. Very recently, there was a leak which is being referred to as blue leaks, where over 16 million lines of information pertaining to police officers, social security numbers, email addresses, photographs was exposed on the dark web for effectively criminals to gain insight into law enforcement. Now, data leakages is a common occurrence in the wider commercial side of things. I mean, I'm sure everyone have been familiar with data leakage such as Equifax, data leakages such as Yahoo. But again, we're now starting to see this creep into the public safety space, and it's something which is of large concern. Again, the more interconnectivity, the more access to internet services makes some of the systems vulnerable to the risks and the threats which take place in the wider internet space. So really, it should be no surprise that we're starting to see more data breaches, more data leakage, because of the nature of the architecture. We're also starting to see activity from advanced persistent threat groups, or APT groups. Now, this is where it's nation state sponsored groups which are designed to target critical infrastructure for cyber terrorism, cyber espionage, etc. And we're starting to see more evidence that that the critical infrastructure is becoming a larger target for these specific groups. Also, with when it comes to public safety, we've got some of the things that are going on this year. Some of the social reform to police or methods of policing. We've seen examples where socially incentivized attacks have been taking place on law enforcement because of the civil unrest, the protests against policing, for example. It creates an environment where people want to go after law enforcement. People want to go after the systems that they operate, and cybersecurity is now an angle that they can go in and can target these systems to cause disruption, to cause impact to some of the authorities and the public safety agencies. We've also got the rising threat of insiders. Now, a lot of the systems that we operate within our customers today, there's a notion that they're closed networks. So one of the things I want to dispel a myth is that there's no such thing as a closed network. The second you connect, the second you put a human in front of a PC or a computer, it's no longer isolated, and threats will exist to that network. because of the interactivity with a human. So things like USB sticks, you don't have to be connected to the internet to get impacted by malware. We talked earlier about 18 million websites which are potentially impacted with malware. All it takes is one person to go onto one of those infected websites, download or have a USB stick connected to the system at the time, take it, go into work, plug it into their public safety system, and you've just introduced malware to a network. So insider threats, whether it's intentional or whether it's accidental, the people who interact with the system on a day-to-day basis, they create threats to the network, and it's something that you've got to think about when trying to protect a network. So now I want to talk a little bit about how can you protect a system from all of these cybersecurity attacks. So cybersecurity attacks in public safety are increasing. What can you do about it to protect the network? So Motorola, we want to be a trusted cyber partner to our customers, and we all know that you can't sell trust. It's something that you've got to earn. So we don't try to sell it. We want to be known as a partner to our customers. So we provide a portfolio of cybersecurity services which are aligned to the NIST cybersecurity framework. If you're not familiar with the NIST cybersecurity framework, it's a risk-based framework which was adopted by the US government in 2017. And we really like this framework because it takes what can be a complex subject and it breaks it down into 5 pillars: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. Now, I think you've only got to say those 5 words out in your head to have a basic understanding of where it's trying to go with this. So we position our services as advisory services, managed security services, system recovery services, and cybersecurity training. Through this combination of those 4 categories of services, we're providing a complete range of services to our customers designed to identify security threats to the network and the operation, implement the protective controls, also be able to detect if something bad happens, and then go into response and recovery mode thereafter. And I'm going to talk about a few of these services in a bit more detail now. So starting off with our advisory services, this is where we're providing services such as risk assessments, where we look to discover the specific vulnerabilities that pertain to the network and develop a robust strategy in alignment to the regulatory frameworks. We're also providing penetration testing. Now, again, I said earlier about it's very important to think like the attacker. Penetration testing is designed to do exactly this. We successfully attempt to penetrate a network from outside of the network. So again, this is thinking like the attacker. What can they see on the internet? What can they do? How can they leverage information? How can they socially engineer information to understand who are the people, where are the weak points within the network, and then penetrate them and try to exploit them. We also provide consultancy services to our customers in the form of expertise, guidance, and again, within the regulatory framework confines of cybersecurity. We also look to provide governance and compliance services. So again, demonstrating adherence to regulatory cybersecurity requirements in line with the organizational needs. A little bit about managed security services. So this is where we provide managed security services to our customers. I spoke earlier about some of the challenges with keeping personnel hired, keeping them trained, keeping them sharp. Another one is cost. In order to set up a 24/7 security operations center, you're looking at about $1 million a year. Now, this is all of the people required to run 24/7 operations. It's the tools, the software, the building, the utilities, the power, all of those good things that come together to create that security operations center. It can be very expensive, so we can provide this type of service on behalf to customers to significantly lower the total cost of ownership and the annual spend on something like security monitoring. So that's just one example of a managed service. We've also got security patching for our customers. Now, I've been in cybersecurity for almost 20 years now, and the top two problems in cyber have not changed. It's patching and it's passwords. And I would hedge my bets and say that it's going to be the same for the next 20 years as well, at least. So security patching, this is where Microsoft release patches, VMware, Red Hat, they all release security patches for the vulnerabilities that get discovered on their technologies and on their products. We take these patches, we run them through vetting, and then we make them available to our customers. The true value in this service is the confirmation that adding a security patch is not going to bring down your mission critical network. And it can happen, and it does happen. So you've got to do the testing, you've got to do the diligence to make sure that it's valid, it works, and it's not going to cause impact to the network. We can also provide it as a managed services mechanism or a methodology where we do all of the patching, we do the rebooting, we go on site, we do the patching. This is a never-ending task. We go back to that challenge around resources. Security patching is hard. It's hard because you've got to get every single system. You've got to make sure every single system is patched, and it's a non-stop job. The second you've patched it, there's a new vulnerability coming out, so it's a continuous cycle. We can now move on to things like security monitoring, advanced threat detection and response. And security monitoring is where we provide 24/7 security monitoring for our customers. In order to provide security monitoring, you've got to be able to extract the data and the logs from the network. So this is firewall systems, antivirus systems, syslog, firewalls, routers, intrusion detection, etc. You've got to take all of that log data, and then you've got to feed it into data storage so that you can perform the analysis, do the investigation, and understand what is going on in the network. This is extremely complex. This is where effectively hundreds of millions of pieces of information and events and data is being sent into a single location, and you've got to find out if anything of interest is happening. It can be like looking for a needle in a haystack, and you can only detect abnormal if you know what normal looks like. So this comes down to experience. Are you experienced in looking at what normal looks like? Are you experienced in looking what good looks like on a network? If you don't know what good looks like, if you don't know what normal looks like, it's going to be very difficult to detect an abnormality or a security intrusion when it comes in. We've also got the ability to provide the advanced threat detection and response for enterprise IT. So not just the public safety system, going outside of those boundaries to look at what's going on in the enterprise IT environment, so cloud infrastructure, SaaS applications, email. Again, cast your minds back to the second slide in this presentation where we showed that the call taker sits within that enterprise environment. Those are some of the threats that you've got to look out for. Those are some of the things that you've got to be protected against. So we can help provide that service for our customers. We're now going to talk a little bit about recovering from a cybersecurity attack. I mentioned the analogy about a fire earlier, and I really do think it's a good analogy for a cyber attack, because the second a fire breaks out, you've got to stamp it out and you've got to repair it and any of the damage that is done as soon as possible. So our services provide insight into what's going on in the network so that if we need to respond, we can do it as soon as possible. Stamp that fire out as soon as it takes place so that it doesn't go down and burn the whole network to the ground. We can also provide threat hunting services. Now, threat hunting, without getting too detailed and too complex, this is the ability to look for the things that the tools can't detect. So if you're an extremely sophisticated cyber attacker, then chances are you're going to know how to avoid setting off some of the security tools that will alert people to your presence. So some of the tools might not detect it, but we can allocate and dedicate people to go into the network and look specifically for some of the telltale signs that malicious activity is taking place on the network. And something to note at this point is that the people that are attacking public safety, they're not always the same people who are attacking banks and commercial entities. They're using very specific, what we call TTPs, or tactics, techniques and processes and policies. So think about it, it's like a calling card for a burglar. A certain burglar will do things in a certain way, and it's no different within cyber attackers. They will use their favorite methods, their favorite tactics to gain access to a network. So we can specifically look for those things. All of our services are built specifically from what we know the criminals are going after on public safety agencies. So if a certain criminal is using a specific tactic to compromise public safety, we will shape our services and our products so that it's protected against those particular policies and particular tactics. And we can also create our services that's designed to detect them. We've also got our array of post-incident analysis and recovery. So again, using that fire analogy, if the house is burnt down, you've got to get someone in to repair it. Now, Motorola Solutions are the best company in the world to help recover and repair a Motorola system. We know our technology like no one else, therefore we can really excel in that section. Again, 24/7 mission critical communications. It has to be up every single minute, every single second of the day. We can help the customers get the systems back on their feet as soon as possible with minimal downtime and disruption. Now I want to talk about our cybersecurity training services. This is where we can start to educate the people who are using the system. I can't emphasize enough how important this is. It's everyone's responsibility to make sure that a system is used in a secure manner. So we can provide classrooms, we can provide classroom training, online training, virtual instructor-led training, all designed to provide varying levels of cybersecurity training. Now, this can be at the absolute basic level of what is phishing, what is social engineering, what is ransomware, what do I do if there's a cyber attack? All these types of questions that, quite frankly, if you don't know the answer to them, then when a cyber attack happens, it's going to be bad. You don't want to be asking questions like, how do I respond to a cyber attack just after one's happened? You've got to be prepared in advance. You've got to do simulations, game day exercises designed to increase everyone's awareness on what to do if a cyber attack happens. So our training courses are designed to help answer some of those questions. We've also got more advanced and more in-depth cybersecurity training subjects available if that's the desire for some of our customers. So this is how we help our customers. And Motorola have been doing this for over 90 years now, and we're providing cybersecurity services to over 1,000 customers in over 100 countries. It's at the core of what we do as a business. So we've got our 3 pillars that we focus on today, all designed to help and provide public safety, mission critical communications. So we've got the infrastructure component, we've got our software enterprise or command center software portfolio, as well as video security and analytics. And cybersecurity really is the wraparound for all 3 of these, because you can't have a safe system if it's not secure. And that's where we do everything we can to protect and make sure that our products are as secure as they can be when they leave the factory door, and then also helping to secure the systems over time for our customers. We've got over 20 years experience in providing security services to our customers, so it's not something that we're new to the party in. But it's something that we're really trying to double down on, because we see the challenges that our customers are facing on a day-to-day basis. Cyber attacks are rising, sophistication is rising. We've got to be able to help our customers do this and protect their missions. On the global scale and experience perspective, again, we talked about some of the challenges around personnel. We've got over 300 plus security trained experts which are focusing on 24/7 security services for our customers today. So the challenge of keeping people sharp, the challenge of keeping people trained, the challenge of keeping people experienced on public safety systems, we're doing that for our customers. The complexity problem. Our security operations center is ingesting over 9 billion security events every single day. That is, like I say, looking for a needle in a haystack. That's where automation analysis comes into play, so that we know what normal looks like. Therefore, we know what abnormal looks like. We can detect it. We can get on top of it as soon as possible and cut it off before it becomes an issue, before it becomes a challenge. And again, we've got 20 years experience of providing this to our customers. And ultimately, the concept of managed services, like I said previously, it dramatically reduces the total cost of ownership, the total cost that our customers are having to pay out in order to protect themselves against these rising threats. So we're getting to the end of this presentation now, and I just want to make sure that everyone has got a few key takeaways that they really take from this session. And it's these 4 points here. So I am going to read them out because it's very important. The public safety landscape is changing and becoming increasingly interconnected. We saw how this was the case throughout this presentation, and particularly the few slides at the start. Everything's becoming more and more connected. We want the benefits of agency to agency communication, but then with that, we've got to start thinking about cybersecurity more. The sophistication and the regularity of these cyber attacks are increasing, and they're increasing specifically to public safety. I mentioned previously that public safety it's kind of the perfect storm for cyber criminals. You've got systems that have to be on 24/7. You've got systems which let's face it, some of them are aging technologies. Some of them are thought of as isolated, closed networks. It's just not the case. It really is not the case. There's no such thing as a closed network. That's something else I want you to take away from this session. But it's not on the slide, but it's definitely something that I want you to take away. Third point is that the threats to public safety are specific to the industry. So, like I said, the people who are attacking banks, the people who are attacking websites, they're not always the same people that are going after public safety agencies. Now, yes, there is some crossover, but you've got to think about who are the people that are attacking my network. What are the tactics, techniques, and procedures that they're using to achieve their goal, and then protect yourself accordingly. Like I said, the products and the services that Motorola are creating are designed specifically to combat the specific attackers who we know are going after public safety. And then finally, the only way to keep the lights on 24/7 is to implement a holistic, risk-based security approach. And it really is the only way to protect the environment. The number of attacks are increasing. The number of vulnerabilities will only continue to increase. So you've got to implement a practice. You've got to implement a procedure which is able to encounter the unknown. So Microsoft don't know what's going to come around the corner. They don't know what the next big vulnerability are. So how can anyone else? Therefore, you've got to have a method in place that can combat that unknown and deal with these vulnerabilities and deal with these attacks as and when they present themselves. So with that, I want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this session. I hope it's been valuable. I hope that you've taken something from it. Like I say, my name is Paul Hill. More than welcome to reach out. You can contact me at paul.hill@motorolasolutions.com, and I'd be more than happy to answer any follow-up questions in the following session that takes place. So thanks again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Outstanding. As we suggested, if you have any questions, please drop them into the Q&A or the chat below. You can also hit *9 and the host will unmute you. Paul, we do have some questions coming in here. If I have a limited to no budget, what is the most impactful thing which can be done to improve cybersecurity?
Okay, so I mentioned in the presentation that the biggest challenges that we face in cybersecurity, it relates to patching and passwords. So some of the biggest impacting things that you can do to increase cybersecurity is to make sure that all of your systems are being patched, and also try and get to the bottom of the password problem around, are people using simplified passwords? Are people not changing with the required amount of frequency, etc.? But ultimately get into patching and passwords. If you've not got a good understanding of how you get into that, then maybe an external assessment or some consultancy services is a good way to start tackling those problems.
Can you please give us an example of tattletale evidence of malware in use?
So evidence that malware is in use, it obviously depends on what the type of malware is trying to achieve. But typically there will be traffic activity which is not what we would call normal. So again, in the presentation I spoke about, you need to know what normal looks like so that you can detect abnormal. So if you've got a good understanding of what your network should be doing, taking a look at the firewalls that are protecting the boundaries of the network, just take a look at what protocols, what IP addresses are being used as source and destination, and then try to understand if that is normal activity over a period. And so this isn't something that you can kind of do straight away and get all the answers to, but over the period of time, you'll start to establish what does normal look like. Now, obviously, if you're a 911 call center and you notice traffic that's going out to the Ukraine or China or Russia, then that is a key indicator that you might want to investigate that type of traffic. But as the attackers become more sophisticated, these types of things can be more covert. So to answer the question in a single sentence is start getting familiar with what should be happening on the network, and then take a look at firewalls, if there's any intrusion detection systems, etc., so that you can detect any abnormalities.
Paul, the next question here is the use of cookies an issue with safety?
So that can be quite a deep question. I'm going to answer it from a data privacy perspective. Because a lot of websites that are in use, which are utilizing cookie technology, a lot of it is designed to extract more information from the browser and the individual for other reasons, like marketing or advertising campaigns. Now, that being said, depending on the type of system that you're using, you do want to employ application security protocols and best practices when creating the websites, so that the information that is extracted from within a cookie, it doesn't contravene any data privacy regulations, etc. Ultimately, though, I think if the attacker is utilizing the data within cookies that is shared when someone accesses a website, that can be quite a deep level of cybersecurity understanding, and it's something that as you go to the website, you just enter into. So when you see the message around should I accept the terms of the cookies, if you've got any doubts around that, you can leave the website, or alternatively, what we're starting to see now is that it can be do you accept the cookies, or do you want to select which ones that you are allowing? So I would always advise people when they're going into a website and they say, do you accept the cookies? Press the advanced button and see exactly what it is they're trying to extract. And I hope I answered that question. But if there was a specific area of cookies that someone wanted to cover, then feel free to reach out to me via email and we can cover it that way.
Well, our next question here, what sort of scaling of services for smaller government bodies, such as a county of just 25,000 people, would you suggest?
So I'm British. Got that from the accent. I'm a real stickler for trying to spend money and getting people to try and spend money. So I think it's a case of implement what requirements your operation has, and don't always think that spending more when it comes to cybersecurity is the right thing. I mean, I've done assessments all over the world in 5 continents globally, and the findings from the reports that I've generated has never been like go buy more Motorola. That's just not been the case. It's been a case of implement education, implement training, best practices, policies, etc. That write it down on a piece of paper and then have the rest of the organization implement it. So to address this specific question, so smaller entities and smaller organizations, I mean, you still need to be covering the same elements that a large organization would be covering. So those 5 pillars of the NIST framework: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Whether you're 3 people or 3 million people in a company, you've still got to employ the same framework. So I think it comes down to experience of the service provider that they have in that type of organization, and then scale it accordingly. So I mean, I try and give you an example on what I think the question is directed to. A cybersecurity assessment for a huge, large organization is going to be north of $100,000. A cybersecurity assessment for a smaller organization with 25 to 50 people, you should be looking at around the, I'd say, $25,000 to $50,000 mark. And the reason the difference is because hopefully the size of the network is a little bit smaller, and the number of people that will need to be questioned or interviewed, or policies that need to be implemented, it can be smaller as well. So hopefully those guidelines give you a bit of an idea.
We do have a raised hand here, Anne Marie. If you could please unmute, we will get that question called in here.
All right, Bob, you're free to go ahead and speak. If you could unmute yourself on your end, then you'll be able to ask your question. All right, Michelle, maybe we can move on to the next and then maybe come back.
Absolutely. Paul, our question here is, can you summarize the difference between TDOS and DDoS?
Yeah, absolutely. So the telephony denial of service is a specific technique which is used on telephony systems, as the name suggests. So a TDOS and a DDoS, they're very similar in nature. So they all come under the denial of service categorization, but the telephony denial of service is specific for IP telephony systems. So again, in the presentation, I spoke through that TDOS is where bogus or erroneous calls are made to 911 call centers. So the real public members of the public who need assistance are not going to be able to get through. So to summarize, TDOS is a classification within denial of service, but it's specific for IP telephony systems, and it's something that we're seeing a huge increase on within the public safety sector. So something that our customers, it's a huge challenge for them, and it's something that we know that they need help with.
Anne-Marie, that is what I have for questions here. Maybe we have one last chance here if people have anything they want to type in for Paul. This was Cyber Threats to Public Safety. Thank you so much to Paul Hill of Motorola Solutions. This workshop will be online later today on the Wisconsin County's website at wicounties.org, and it will be Paul's full presentation and the full webinar with the intro that we had a few technical difficulties at the beginning, but you'll be able to see that at that point as well. Next week, our virtual workshop is on promoting diversity in county boards. It is 9 a.m. next Monday. So at that time, we look forward to seeing you all. We will send out a reminder this week. And with that, Paul, do you have any final thoughts here? Are we good?
No, I think we're good. Just again, thank you for giving me the time to speak to everyone, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, all. We appreciate your time, and we will see you back here next week.